Sup Gloomers, or Frosties? So today we're going to be talking about enhancements. I know a lot of people who especially got into Gloomhaven love the idea of permanently enhancing some of the cards. And Gloomhaven, there was a lot of repeated strategies that were super fun and went really well. So it's great that people got to enjoy that. And Gloomhaven Digital made a few changes to that. Come Frosthaven, even more changes start to hit, and they're huge. We're going to be going over, first off, what's changed from Gloomhaven to Frosthaven enhancements. We're going to be going over specifically what are good enhancement pips to just be aware of and look out for. What are some good starting pips out of the starting characters that you can enhance for cheap at low levels, as well as going over the new enhancement system. And at the end, we're going to be talking about the building that unlocks enhancement later. I'm putting that towards the end because there are a little bit of spoilers as to what that building unlocks as you upgrade it. So first we're going to cover what's changed with enhancements so we can get through all the non-spoiler stuff before we talk about that building. And it's only light spoilers. I'm not actually going to talk about how it gets unlocked, and I'm not going to talk about the quests and how to best to do those and what the story involved with those ones are. That's going to be all off on its own thing and for you to discover. So I'm just going to talk about the benefits of the building itself. So let's dig in. As per usual, if you like Frosthaven content and want to see more, be sure to like. It really helps the channel out, and subscribe. And if you do want to help the channel out, please consider joining Patreon, or at least maybe hang out in Discord. We shitpost and talk about Frosthaven a lot. It's fun. So one of the biggest changes to Gloomhaven only had a single type of pip, a circular pip, and that could house any enhancement you wanted. The cost varied and had some differences on what's the level of it, how many, is it multi-target, so on and so forth, but that was kind of the only restriction. The biggest thing is there were some pips that were, if they were absent, some cards kind of got boring, but some cards that the presence of a pip made it that much more powerful. I think there's one card in particular that the presence or absence of a pip really makes it super different. And the current One character Banner Spear has a very similar card lacking a pip. I do think the Banner Spear's version of the card is very good, mostly because it's actually pretty balanced, and the Gloomhaven version was not. I think everyone has enough information to infer this without talking about spoilers, but just the idea of the different types of pips allows us to put more pips on there without it getting broken. Also, at the very least, you're going to be a little bit limited. But what did the different pips mean now on the new system? So let's talk about those. The first and the lowest of the symbols is a square. A square can only hold a +1, except if it's a move, in which case you can also add a jump to it. That's all it can do, is +1s or jumps. That's it. Now, adding jumps to things are very good, but +1s are pretty basic. As a result, you're going to see lots of squares, especially on summons. So instead of being able to add cool stuff to summons, primarily you're only going to add +1s, but being able to add a lot of cool stuff to summons would just kind of break them. So instead of having no pips, just having some pips kind of is really cool. So there are notably more square pips that we see compared to what we saw in Gloomhaven, obviously, but there's more pips in general, but there are more pips than would be if we didn't include the square pip, which is a little boring. Then you also have the circular pip, which can now also hold an element as well. There's actually, between circle and square, that's going to be the majority of the enhancements that you see. There's a lot of pips that have that, and that's honestly a good system, because that's going to cover a lot of people love enhancing for elements, to turn a move 4 into a move 4 in your favorite element. The Deathwalker literally has Eclipse, which is great, but move 4 is a good card. But move 4 and Infused Dark completely changes its functionality. It's wonderful. So that's just a good example of how these two ones pop up and why they're just generally good. And this is one thing I talked about ages ago. It's the Cursed NATO from Cragheart. The Cragheart could not have had another higher level pip nowadays, because probably we could have put a +1 on there, a square pip, but anything above that would just be too ridiculous nowadays, just due to balance reasons. But also, the next thing is the diamond pip. And the diamond pip is really what you want to be looking for. The diamond pip can fit any +1, and it can potentially anything that's above. But it also, you can put any negative condition on it. So you can slap curse on these, wound, poison, immobilize, and that's really amazing. So these are the ones that you're going to be trying to find, as well as there's diamond with a plus symbol, which is the same thing but positive. It should be pretty straightforward because like diamond plus are going to be on heals and stuff, and diamonds are just going to be on like attacks and whatnot. So that's the part that I really like about this in particular is this makes that it really allows you to, for certain cards, say, hey, if you want to get creative with this one, go ahead. Like the Drifter has a couple of its like repeated attack cards that are like really good and you're going to be using your whole level, and they have diamonds on them. So instead of being like, well, I guess this is a boring attack 4, you could turn that into an attack 4 poison, an attack 4 wound, and that you can actually make it an attack 4 curse if you wanted to on your Drifter, to just add some utility or whatever you want to it. It's fantastic. But they don't obviously add it to all the cards, but the fact that there's still plenty with diamonds makes it pretty great. Last but not least, there's some hex ones, and all those is to expand the amount of hexes you can target with those multi-target attacks. At that point, that one's it's literally the same as Gloomhaven, just the shape of it's different, but it's just an indicator. Additionally, the sticker sheet has different sizes, which will tell you like, are they diamond, are they a square, are they a hex, to let you know which ones they do. So they always go up though. So like hexes can only add hexes, diamonds can only fit on diamonds, circles can fit on diamonds or circles, and squares can fit on anything. So outside of the fact that in Gloomhaven you unlock it by doing a quest chain and getting an achievement, in Frosthaven you have to build a building that gets it. But what building is it? We won't talk about it yet. So, but that's like a minor difference. In the course of a campaign, you will eventually unlock enhancement one way or the other in Gloomhaven or Frosthaven. However, the biggest thing are the changes of enhancements. So let's go over to the enhancement changes chart, and let's take a look at what's different. So target +1 now costs 25 more gold, going from 50 to 75. Shield +1 has gone down 20, going from 100 gold down to 80. Pull +1 has gone down 10 gold from 30 to 20. Retaliate +1 has gone down 40 gold from 100 gold down to 60. Summons, the summon cost, move, and hit points have gotten cheaper. Move is now only 60 gold instead of 100, so adding +1 move is notably cheaper than it was in Gloomhaven, and adding a hit point is 40 instead of 50 as it was in Gloomhaven. Poison's gotten cheaper. To add poison to an attack to a diamond pip now costs 50 instead of 75. Muddle now is cheaper, 40 instead of 50. Strengthen has doubled from 50 to 100, and Mobilize has increased by 50 gold, going from 100 gold to 150. Curse has been doubled in cost from 75 to 150. Bless has increased by 25, going from 50 to 75. Regenerate and Ward have been added, Regenerate costing 40 and Ward costing 75, and as well as Disarm has been removed. You can no longer add Disarm to any enhancement pip. Additionally, if there is a loss symbol on the action but no persistent symbol on the action, the cost of the enhancement's cut in half. Also, if there's a persistent symbol on it, regardless of whether it has a loss icon or not, the cost of the enhancement is tripled. So those are really rare, but like, given that you play it and they're like permanent and last for the whole scenario, adding like even +1 for something that's going to be persistent like that is huge. So tripling it may sound harsh, but some of them are incredible. So what's the general strategy? I mean, obviously, after you've unlocked the building and unlocked enhancements, the general strategy is to find, first off, level 1 enhancements. I know everyone likes to go for like, oh, let's find the big impact one and like save up 200, 300 gold. I think that was notably easier to do in like Gloomhaven Digital when you only had like a minimal team. You were controlling like all the players, and you could like kind of move the enhancements together and like make one person loot all the coins, so on and so forth. In Frosthaven, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but some of those have actually gotten notably cheaper, especially some of the more, obviously, like Strengthen is going to be a lot harder to do. It's not only more uncommon to find Strengthen on as a even available pip, but in general, it's just not as common now. But find those level 1 cards. But every now and then you'll get like level 1 cards that are like, oh man, the top and the bottom are so good. And I love those cards, but for enhancement, if you're spending even time on them, you're not going to get as much mileage. For example, Blinkblade's Twin Strike. The card's great, you're going to be using it for basically your whole career, but sometimes you want the bottom because the bottom's effects are really good for healing. Or if you need Pierce, that's really good too. But the top, sometimes you're going to want the double attack. So depending on the scenario, enhancing this card may not actually pay off as much as you think it does, because you're going to use it a lot, but you're going to be splitting time between the top and the bottom depending on what the scenario demands. Meanwhile, Blurry Jab, although the bottom is very good, you use the top quite often, and that makes that one super valuable. So consider enhancing stuff where you're going to do that as often, as well as like conditional cards like Deathwalker's Eclipse. A lot of times you're not going to be using the top until later, or you're going to hold on to this card for a long time and just spamming the bottom, because once you spam the top, once you play the top once, it's done. That's it. That's all you got. It's done. It's lost. But that bottom is a move 4. It's really hard to complain about a move 4. But adding a +1 to it is great. But adding an element or anything to that, finding a card that you will use the bottom more often, like the Drifter's Vile Assault, is good. Although changing that from a move 2 to a move 3 isn't as valuable, it's still a card that you'll last forever. And I personally think it's a viable option regardless because of that. Although a Pip on the heel too, it would have been too powerful, honestly, so I get that. So find some cheap cards, find some cheap enhancements that can do impact a long time over the course of a scenario. Now that we've covered a little bit of bases on what are good enhancements, and especially diamonds and diamond pluses. You're going to be hunting for diamonds. This is basically you're playing Minecraft but for cards. Not really, but like those are the best ones, because although trust me, +1s, like adding +1 to some of these moves is still very good, or adding an element is good. Like adding poison to one of the Drifter's repeated attacks is huge. And it's only 50 gold to turn one of your cards that you use every long rest into a poison. And that can add up to a lot. Personally, I think that's one of the best things. So you have to find some of the things like that. Or adding even ward to some of your heals. So the thing is, which ones can do that? It's like which ones to be aware of for. So that's generally what you want to be looking for some of the locked classes. But for some of the starter classes, I've actually picked a handful of them in case you don't want to dig through all the cards. Sustain momentum and continuous health. If you're using the top half of either of them, like let's say you're doing a melee or a ranged build, you're going to be probably playing those tops repeatedly throughout your whole career, and adding a condition to those makes them immensely more useful. Although it's super, super, super expensive, adding immobilize to continuous health as a ranged attacker makes you suddenly have some measure of control as well. Additionally, take note that Prudent Preparation actually has Diamond Plus enhancements on it if you want to add self conditions to yourself. Especially good if you want to pair it with like Bloodletting to strengthen yourself, do the bottom of Bloodletting to attack with advantage, and since you strengthened yourself during your turn, on your next turn you have advantage on all of your attacks during that round. Keep that in mind. Banner Spear. So although Rallying Cry is a little bit harder to set up, adding the other Pip does mean you actually get to disarm you don't just get to attack 3 on both those enemies you added, you get to disarm both of them, unlike Boldening Blow, which specifically only says 1 enemy in the attack pattern. So adding another Pip to Rallying Cry is significant. Additionally, Javelin is super easy to pull off. It gives you an element that you reliably need, and there's a Diamond Pip on it. On the other hand, Regroup has a Diamond Plus on it, so if you want to add a cool condition to that, that's good as well. Tip of the Spear is a very good card, although I generally only suggest adding something to its move. Considering you do lack jump on the class, that's something you should consider. Deathwalker, I'm not a big fan of Deathwalker's pips, but something to note, Anger of the Dead is something you're going to be using to like vacuum up a lot of shadows and shoot out a big laser. You can add a condition to that for no increased cost, just the base cost of the condition. Fluid Knight is something you're going to be using pretty often as well, so even adding +1 damage to that is significant because you're going to hit them pretty hard. Additionally, Wave of Anguish is the one I really like, because although it's move 2 and then move all your shadows 1, especially for the melee build who does care a little bit about positioning where you want to move yourself and then also move your shadows. Changing that to +1 to move 2 and then move all your shadows 2, and that's literally twice as effective. So that's a very key one to keep in mind. Geminate Pip. So keep in mind, Changeling Boom does have 2 pips and 2 attacks, but the second one actually has a condition on it, which could be really cool. I would have liked it if it was on the first one, because then you could put poison on it and follow up with the second, but clearly they figured that was too good. Reckless Jab is also a card that you use for a while because it's non-loss disarm. I definitely put a thing on that. Horned Beetle Carapace is somewhat annoying because the move ones, first off, it's a good card. The top is something you're going to use in several scenarios anyway, but the bottom's pretty good because you want to have the shield self. but the move 1's harder to use. But turning it into a move 2 shield 1 or 2, depending on if you have the element, drastically changes its functionality, because no longer, sometimes you're like, oh crap, I need to move this far. Changing it from 1 to 2 is pretty significant. It's not my favorite, but I've noticed the biggest difference between them. Also, since the Geminate has so much in its hand size, you're going to be using the level 1 cards significantly more often than other like lower hand size classes. Like Blank Blade, pretty halfway through its career is only using half of its level 1 cards now, whereas the Geminate 2/3 of the cards still going to be like level 1. Additionally, take a note, Selfless Offering has a Diamond Plus. Into My Embrace is a card that you're going to be using very often. Just as a result, you should enhance it. Also, the bottom of Mind Spike is a non-loss bottom ranged attack with a Pip. Use it. Blink Blade, Blurry Jab is a bread and butter attack. You should be able to use that Pip effectively. Pick something cool for it. Kinetic Transfer, if you actually add a +1 to it, gives you a very rare move 4 while slow on a level 1 card. Just a heads up. Sand in the Hourglass is a little bit harder to use, but it is a heal self and all allies, so adding a plus to that drastically increases its effectiveness. And Temporal Displacement is really cool because you have a Pip on a bottom attack on your Blink Blade, so that's something to keep in mind. Bone Shaper, this is one I'm not as a big fan of, but the bottom of Damned Horde is hilarious because although it is Curse, target 2 enemies at range 2, it's got 2 pips, so if you dump a lot of money, it's Curse, target 3 at range 3. That drastically changes the power of the card. That's so much higher than a level 1 card's value. So although you do have to get significant gold to do that, that's very valuable. Decrepit Skeletons are something you could consider, but if you're doing like an escort, I know it's not level 1, but once you start to get to the higher level summons, adding value to those actually goes a long way, especially if you're going to be running that for a while. Also, Decaying Will is an attack you're going to be using for a while, especially with your high hand size. You're going to be bringing some level 1 cards for a while, given the fact that that's a nice way to drop a good condition on an enemy, given its long range and gives you a non-loss element that you need. The fact that it has a diamond pip on it, I think, is this just in. It's really good. So we're going to talk about the enhancer building now. So if you don't want to hear what happens when you advance the enhancer building, thanks for watching. I'm going to just wait for a little bit longer. You guys are amazing. Thank you. I'm going to get into it in 3, 2, 1. Hooray. So thank you for sticking around. Enhancement. The enhancer level 1 does nothing. It just says you can now enhance stuff, which is definitely not nothing, but it's just congratulations, you got enhancement. Once you upgrade it to level 2, I strongly advise, if you do unlock the enhancer, punch it to 2 as fast as possible, because that says all enhancements cost 10 gold less. So although some of those values, some of them change dramatically, like the +1 attack going from 50 to 40 is huge, because that's like a 20% off. Like I swear I get crazy over like, hey, get 20% off this. Like, dude, you have my attention. I love 20% off stuff. But yeah, 20% off is huge. Now, of course, this won't for the really large enhancements, that like 150 down to 140 aren't going to be as big. But if you actually need a volume of cheaper enhancements, or like to want to do one of those, that's big. That's so big. So like, just keep that in mind. So yeah, push it to 2 real fast. Once you get to level 3 and 4, it only starts to matter for stacking more enhancements or doing high levels. So once you get it to level 3, once you enhance level 2 or higher cards, the penalty for enhancing a card beyond level 1 is reduced by 10 gold. So the cumulative thing can add up to, like, first off, like enhancing a level 9 card is 200 gold. So every little bit to drop that down to, it's still going to be very expensive to enhance those stuff, but yeah, that's dropping it is good. So, but that only applies to higher level cards. So if you're sticking to the level 1 strategy, it's not going to affect it. But even then, this makes the level 2 cards notably more tangible. So like with a level 1 enhancer, adding like +1 to a level 2 card costs 75 gold. But if you have a level 3 enhancer, instead of 75 gold, it's 55 gold. So that's immediate impact. That's big. So just keep that in mind for those things. Whereas the level 4 one only matters if you're putting repeated enhancements on the same card, in which case it's reduced by 25. So that's big. Now, of course, if the action, not per card, it's per action, because each half of a card counts as its own action. Once you get to Enhancer 4, you're already at like high levels. You probably have more gold anyway, but this allows you, once you have an obscene amount of stuff, you're getting through the campaign, you've got all stuff unlocked. Once you start stacking multiple enhancements on the same card, it will be cheaper to provide future enhancements on the same effect. So I guess if you've got like the Bone Shaper, the bottom of Damned Horde, for example, that would make that cheaper. But this is going to be a relatively uncommon one, but 25 gold is big. So 25 gold discount is significant, but I personally think the level 1 to 2 is the biggest difference, and then only push from 2 to 3 once you actually want to start enhancing cards above level 1. So that's the general strategy. So like look for diamond pips, push it to level 2, and then try to find the cards that you every rest cycle use the specific half of it more often. So that's kind of the general gist of doing it. And additionally, because of the impact of stuff, I do want to point out that although Ward sounds really tasty, at 75, I personally have found Ward to not be as impactful as I wanted it to be. And although I do like adding Regenerate, to get the difference between the Regenerate and 2 health, to get it to 2 health is not necessarily as reliable. It depends on your card size, like what class you're playing as well. So like personally, it would be much easier to be able to summon a bunch of stuff, regenerate on a Bone Shaper, and get a lot of value because you stay away from it. But there's not a lot of plus diamond enhancements on the Bone Shaper that target self. Although you clearly have like Fell Remedy, which is great. It only affects an ally within range. You can't put it on yourself, so kind of defeats that strategy. But also try to pick things that fit your role. So although I was talking a little bit about how Ward is not necessarily as valuable as you expect, it does get pretty good with certain things. So like if you do get to the front line, it will at worst mitigate a point of damage, but I feel like for that value, you should probably be trying to getting more than like 2 or 3 value out of it. So just a heads up, I do really kind of want to caution about adding that one, whereas I still love, although it's expensive, adding Immobilize to ranged attacks is always super valuable. Wound is always going to be useful, especially adding Wound to any attack that already has crowd control built into it, like Immobilize, is obviously the most valuable thing you can do. And if you have good openers, adding Poison to any opener is very valuable because then it'll make every successive attack notably more effective. Also depends on your party size, or if you have like summons with it. If you have like a large amount of volume of attacks, adding Poison in general is a good strategy. So between when you can unlock it, between how to push the building first, and which kind of enhancements to look out for, I hope all this has been helpful for that. Out of all the level 1 cards, let us know what your favorite enhancement is, and even in like go back to Gloomhaven. What were your favorite enhancements then? And you can't say Cursinado because I already said it, so you have to pick a different one. But yeah, just let us know what's your favorite part about enhancements. Do you like the new enhancement system? Do you think the Diamond Plus thing is a little confusing, or do you think it's an improvement? Let us know. So I hope this helped. Thanks all of you for watching. Thanks to my patrons, especially the Inox patrons. You guys are obviously wonderful. I know I repeat it every video, and I think I've said this a few times, but I really can't overstate how much it is. I've just recently withdrawn all of my Patreon money that I've been saving and put it towards my surgery fund, and we are, it's just amazing between the GoFundMe and the Patreon how much I've saved for my surgery. So thank you so much, because medical bills kind of suck here in the US, and that's been, yeah. Anyway, I was just trying to elaborate. I'm not like saying thank you for no reason. I really do appreciate all of you who subscribe to Patreon, and if you like the benefits, all the guides get put up at least like 3 to 6 days early, so you'll be able to access things early, as well as sometimes I'll ask for video ideas because some people have mentioned it in Patreon and I've turned that into a video. So if that's something you'd be interested or just want to help support my transition, please consider supporting. It's wonderful. So thank you so much, patrons, and thank all of you for watching.